Hey everybody, this is Dave Whitmarsh from Whitmarsh Consulting Group, owner of Best Practice in HR. Today I'm going to be having a little chat with somebody I've known for probably a decade or so.
Don't age us.
Yeah, that's true. And so we joked a bit about how to pronounce Rob's last name. So it's Rob Cantalana. But how might you say that in Italy, Rob?
Yeah, so in English, Catalano, but Italian's Catalano. So you choose.
Yeah, yours is much the Italian version is much better. So I met Rob a few years back, and he was the vice president of marketing, I believe, at the time of Achievers, and so that's my understanding of how Rob got in the HR space. He can certainly. How did you find your way into this HR?
Yeah, so by schooling and by studying, I was a marketer. That's what I went to school for in university. And what was interesting is, you start working with other companies, you're owning a brand and so on. But when I started working early stages of Achievers, that was I Love Rewards before that. That was actually Snap Promotions before that, just
Oh,
handling us. If you think about marketing being the philosophy of human motivation, why customers make decisions and so on. My fascination and passion was really around, we were all consumers before we were employees. We're the same people. And it was really about employee motivation, what made them tick and how we make a greater workplace. So part of my, again, schooling was in marketing, but the passion kind of led in the HR and people space. And ever since then, it was, the journey with Achievers, working with our customers and growing them, helping engage their employees. And even though I kind of wore a marketing hat, I was wearing some other, consulting and customer hats. And then once the Achievers journey, kind of ended after acquisition, the decision was to start up another company with WorkTango, focusing on improving lives at work. So it's really interesting. It's the same principles of marketing in terms of human motivation, but just
right.
the employee before the consumer.
Yeah. So how long have you been, or how long has WorkTango been in motion?
Yeah, so I guess officially it's been out in motion around 3 years. It's obviously had its initial thoughts and analysis and studies and research before that, but really in a short period of time, we've been out there, but made a lot of ground in that short period of time as well.
Right. So I guess, being a very experienced marketer in the HR vendor space, if we will, you obviously started WorkTango because you saw a need for something, right? And so what did you feel, the HR space was sort of missing that you wanted to come in and take care of?
Yeah, so typically what I saw in working with a lot of small and large organizations was that when it came to listening to the voice of their employees, there were a lot of challenges that people were having with it. It was too infrequent for how quickly our companies were moving, right? The annual engagement survey just wasn't cutting it. It was really expensive to use large consulting firms and have people look at insights and data versus technology.
Right.
It was quite cumbersome. No one liked the process. Employees didn't like it. Managers didn't like it. And the problem was it was taking forever to get the data. So literally we'd send out a survey to our employees. 4 months later, we get the data, but our company's dramatically changed and it wasn't providing a lot of value. So that was kind of the issue, is how do we help companies hear the voice of their employees in a more real-time manner. Everyone's moving in a more agile focus. Our company's moving quicker. And HR has a seat at the table now, and they're using data to make decisions. So that was the real aha moment where we realized that with using technology, leveraging those processes and being more real time, we could really arm not only HR but other people in the company with real insights of their employees to build a better environment to impact engagement, performance, and so on.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So what sort of feedback do you get from, I guess, different people? What sort of feedback do you get from, people that you're talking to, whether trade shows, sales calls? Do they seem pretty optimistic or like what they hear?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. People are really liking what they see in here. I think once you see the capacity and the ability of what you can do, it really changes people's thoughts. The reality is people are pretty scarred by this process, right? Everyone's done that 90 question engagement survey that no one liked, and by the time you got the data, they couldn't activate it. So what we see is a lot of raised eyebrows. moving a lot of people from the current ways they're doing things. And literally, we've, in a short period of time, we've grown to, 60 countries, 22 different languages. Like, we're starting to see us triple over last year what we did this year. So what people are seeing, they're liking. But once they get out of that mentality, that doesn't have to be the way it always was. Which typically, I think, a lot of HR executives have been doing similar things over a long period of time. So technology and approach and a lot of new validation is helping people change. And so people are really liking what they're seeing, which obviously makes us happy.
Right. Yeah. So from an HR perspective, what do you see, where's their stumbling blocks when it comes to change, and your product, not in general, right?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting was when it comes to implementing new technology or process, I think HR has it more challenging than any other, let's say, leader or executive in any organization. One thing is, let's say I led a sales team and I wanted to run a new technology or a new process. I buy a technology or I throw in a new process. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I throw it away and launch a new one with my team or my department. When you start thinking about HR, change is tough because it impacts every single employee in an organization, right? That global, there's a big change management process that goes into it. So it's a lot, and it's under the microscope more than any other change anyone ever has. So that's, I think, just challenges from a global standpoint. But I think, particular to WorkTango and how we work with our customers, they're embracing the change because they're just seeing more value. It's saving them a bunch more time than having to do things manually. They're getting the insights they would need to make better people decisions, see trends in real time. And one thing that's unique, I guess, to WorkTango is it's enabling the leaders as well. So HR hasn't become a filter to this voice or hearing employee sentiment. It's actually saying, well, let's put this in the hands of leaders or other executives so they can actually activate this in more real time. Because HR's role is to enable and create an environment where people can succeed, not individually sit down with each leader and say, this is exactly how you need to manage your teams. So at a high level, that's kind of what I've seen in terms of the change and kind of adjustment and approach.
Right. It must be interesting in a sense when you go through the process of engagement with a customer, a future customer, that it's really unique because everybody hates the annual review process, but it's already in place, right? So it's like a catch. It's really like a total catch-22, right? They don't want to change because we all know that there's work involved with change, right? I mean, everybody's busy, so it's hard to find that time to dedicate towards change. But they hate the process as is, right? So it must be something that people are like, yeah, we're gonna do it, but when, right?
Yeah. I think what I find interesting, a lot of our customers, now that you can use the employee voice, let's say that we're talking about technology or tool for any initiative you'd want from an employee voice standpoint. So there are very specific things like employee engagement and change management and business transformation, but you can use it for anything else as well. So what we're finding is when some of our potential customers or customers are resistant to change, or it's going to be challenging to change the mind of other people, they're not just, let's say, ripping out the engagement survey, they're just supplementing it. So they'll use WorkTango for a more frequent pulse. Or let's not wait another year to get feedback or see trends on this. Let's identify what the issues are and dig deeper into those and learn in a more real-time manner of what's happening in our business so we can make action and actually impact those things. So sometimes, even though people are resistant to completely ripping things out, and again, a lot of companies we work with have completely changed their approach, sometimes they're using us just to supplement it because change, especially global organizations, is hard.
Yeah. So I got to put you on the spot for a bit here. So what are, what are, like, give me an example of a time that either you guys have thought about it or customers come to you that's really been like a good creative, different thought process, innovative, way that they've viewed this or have used you guys.
Yeah, so a couple of things. If we think about employee voice and surveys, as I was mentioning, usually employee engagement is where people land. Now, one thing that really, especially early on in the WorkTango years, a lot of our customers were going through major business transformations or change management. So what they were doing is they weren't using the tool as a pulse of engagement. They were saying, well, we understand people is the biggest reason why change fails. If we can allow structure in a platform to ask the right questions, dig into things more custom to us, not the 15 questions we recommend that they ask. Now we can start understanding how do we use this technology for change. So getting more frequent and understanding at the beginning of a change, do people understand the case for it? Are they being communicated to? So it was using our platform in a totally different way that we originally built it, and that really fueled us to create a more custom way that people can use it, not for best practice, but for the right practice for them. Right. So that's one example. I think another one that was really interesting is that often when companies do this employee voice initiative or want to hear it, there's a lot of quantitative data that goes into it, but qualitatively, it's really painful to read hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of comments to understand the voice of your employees. And we were challenged. They're like, how do we make this easier on ourselves other than reading them all and categorizing them and so on, which was taking so much time. So what we did is we integrated with IBM Watson, and we look at all the comments for their employees, and we give sentiment to it. We give themes. Are people talking about upper management or goal setting? And is that negative or neutral or positive, to dig right in? And even take it to the step further is, how do we acknowledge people's voice are being heard? Too often we hear that employees provide their feedback and comments. It goes into a black hole. No one ever responds. Yeah. And how can we make that easier? So we launched something called Anonymous Conversations based on that feedback from customers. So literally our customers can go in and acknowledge people's comments. That was a great idea. Thanks for listening. Or even respond anonymously to dig deeper into those comments. So again, just another example, one that, there was a challenge in the current process. We tried to leverage technology to make it easier and more beneficial, not just for HR and leaders, but for the employees as well. Because too often we think about HR tech and we forget about the employees. Right. They need to be the center of everything we do.
Yeah, well, that's good because, everybody wants the voice, right? Everybody wants to be heard, and just some acknowledgement and a forum to put it out there, right? Is great. So when, do you see, when people use your product or start engagement with you, I guess there's two opportunities, right? If you have the knowledge in-house, obviously you can roll the product out, but do you see down the road that working with consultants would be something that like a channel for you guys that you'll say, okay, that you can either be a reseller or whatever, but they can put it in, but a lot of times with the HR being so tight, with budgets and staff and whatnot, did they really have the time to interpret the data and the feedback and create an action plan on it?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of answers there. One is we work with companies directly where we do the design consulting. It's what we call it, or what are the right questions, cadence. Right. What are you trying to accomplish, and plug that into how we would recommend the use of the platform and approach. Now the platform is very customized, that if you already had a approach within an organization that you want to plug into our world, you can do that as well. And a lot of people are doing that to enable the ease of ability to get those insights, save a lot of time, and enable other people to see that data. So that's one way we work specifically with our customers. And again, some of them leverage higher levels of consulting from our end and action planning and so on. We do provide, a base amount of that. But we do have a whole other channel when it comes to consultancies as well. We work with individual independent consultants, companies that are, mid-size, even some of the top 4 consulting firms that are partners of ours. Mm-hmm. They have their methodologies, they have their approaches, and they plug it in and white label our solution. And then they're able to, one, get the voice of employees in a more real-time way. 2, validate what they're trying to accomplish in organizations and identify an ROI, right? See, are we seeing impact on what we've done as a consultancy? And in some cases, use that to even sell more consulting dollars, right? At the end of the day, right? The insight will allow them to be able to grow their accounts. Right. So that channel is something that WorkTango is working in right now. We probably have about 7 or 8 partners that currently use the platform with their customers today, and others that we obviously are talking to. But quite a long answer, but the reality is we play in all those worlds, and that's why we built the technologies to be flexible, again, for the right practice for companies, not just our one methodology you must use.
Right. Perfect. And so what, if you're an HR person, and running your organization, what might be some of the signs that, WorkTango might be a good fit for you? What might be some of the questions they're asked, or some of the problems they're having?
Yeah. So, I was mentioning earlier, like some of the things that we see what's wrong with the voice of employees or listening to them is typically if they're trying to get something more frequent, that's when they start looking at, a WorkTango type solution. When they're looking at something that is more to enable not just keeping data within HR, but share that from a level of transparency with leaders or all employees or executives, that's where they start looking at us and saying, how do we enable this a lot easier? Typically when it comes to just bettering the experience for employees and just more of a frequent pulse, not a painful experience, not 90 questions, maybe it's a quick 5-question pulse, they start looking at WorkTango. So I think when they're right now frustrated with their current process, and most importantly, they're not feeling they get the ROI on what they're currently investing in, probably an annual engagement survey or a platform, that's when they start thinking, okay, there's something else out there. And a lot of companies are moving towards trying to upskill or up their kind of HR game and process game, start looking around, and that's when they really start seeing that there's other opportunities out there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and from a straight product side, where do you see it going? What's next? What's on your roadmap? And, what do you want to take over?
Yeah, so if we think about, we're not a measurement company. And what I mean by that is, yes, we can measure, we can hear the voice, we can share the details of any way you want to see the data and compare your leaders, your departments, your countries to get insight. But it's really more about the insights and action. So yes, we can measure, but that's not what we want to be. So a great example is we just launched something called our Learning Coach. So if leaders had access to our platform and they receive the voice of employees, based on the responses that they're getting from their employees, let's say we're using engagement as an example. Let's say their bottom 3 engagement drivers for those individual leaders are recognition and communication. We're actually serving real-time content based on that algorithm to say, hey, here's some insights, the best TED Talk videos, the best articles curated around the web to help you be better at those items. So that's more on the action side. We've launched things like predictive analytics. So now with all this data we're sitting on, how do we help you identify if you wanted to increase your employee net promoter, which of the categories or drivers of engagement, for example, would have the biggest impact on that? Because we know you can't, as an HR professional, do everything in 1 year, right?
Right.
So when I think about the activating leaders as well as the data side of things, when our customers use the platform for many reasons, again, you can use it unlimited for any employee voice reason, that's where there's power in data to help make better decisions. So that's really where we want to play, is not just the measurement, but the action part of it as well.
Gotcha. All right. I think this is great. Is there anything you wanna say, or obviously for the people that are watching this, there'll be contact information if you do want to get a hold of Rob. But tell us a bit about what you have coming up, what you're doing, where you're going, and anything you want to say. It's your mic.
All right. Well, thanks for coming into my home here. And open the windows or I'll look like I'm in the witness protection program. But no, I mean, I think a lot of companies are starting to make that shift. If there's ever, interest in having that conversation, we're happy to do it. We've had the luxury of being able to work with some of the highest growth companies at a couple of hundred, to 1,000 employees, to some of the world's global brands out there that depending on the different needs you have, there's a right solution for you. So, we personally love connecting with, HR leaders all across the globe. If anyone was watching this and wants to connect, feel free to. It's great to always have that conversation. But, it's funny. You see it on my shirt here, right? When we built the company, we said, we don't want a mission because missions end. We have a long life passion to improve lives at work. And that's how we hire. That's our approach. That's our focus as an organization. So, that's the last thing. That's the lens we look at the world through, everything we're doing from a technology or a service standpoint. We want to align and talk to those types of people. So if there's anyone out there, reach out and connect. It'd be cool to grab a virtual or real coffee and learn more about how you're improving lives at work or what your vision is.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks, Rob. And hopefully Rob and I happen to live roughly in the same area, so maybe we'll see each other at a local event, and I'll take you up on one of those real coffees instead of virtual coffees.
All right, sounds good. Perfect.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, David.